Recording in progress.
Noswaith da, cynghorydd Mike Priestley ydw i, a fi ydy cadeirydd y pwllgor trosalwg a craffu economi a lle. Gai croeso bawb I cyfarfod heno. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live stream fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the council's website following the conclusion of this meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending on Zoom to choose the language of your choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We will go between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, please pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Service Officer is aware and then let them know as soon as you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. So that said, I will go into the agenda and we will go on to item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Apologies from Councillor Aaron Wynne and David Carr.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, Code of Local Government. Any declarations of interest? No? See no declarations of interest. Urgent matters. Do we have any urgent matters?
No urgent matters, Chair.
Okay. Item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting. So to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting, you can see these on pages 4 to 8. I'm not going to go through the minutes. They've been there in the agenda for you. So could I have a proposer and seconder for the minutes, please? Councillor Hannah online and Councillor Tom in the chamber. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That's carried. That's item 4. Item 5 is the minutes of the local area forums, and these minutes are for information only. So if we start off with local area forum central, you can find these in the agenda pack on pages 9 to 14. Do I have Councillor Cheryl Carlisle or Chris Hughes to present these?
You certainly do, Councillor Mike. I'm online.
Welcome.
Thanks very much indeed. Yes, I just asked members to accept these minutes and also to note the breadth and volume of the workload in the LAF Central. And I'm pleased to say that we've now introduced a standing item for rural issues as well, because it tended to be the coastal strip centric. So yes, great volume of work going on, and thanks to all members and officers that help so much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cheryl. So I put you down as proposing the minutes, and can I have a second? No, she can't as chair. Okay, so can I have someone to, Councillor Chris, a seconder for that, please? Sorry, I can't see that line. Is that Keith? Councillor Gale. Thank you, Councillor Gale. All those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. They're noted. So the next item is the local area forum west. Basically, you can see these on pages 15 to 23. And I just want to note that there are actually 2 sets of minutes for approval here. One was a special meeting and one was another meeting there. So do I have Councillor Kathy Augustine online? Do I?
Yes, I'm here, Mike.
Thank you.
So thanks. As Chair of Local Area Forum West, I'm pleased to present the minutes of our last 2 meetings for members to note and to add thanks. On 16th of December, Amanda Hughes, Melissa Davis, Ellen Edwards attended a special meeting, and we also opened that up to town clerks and councillors from wards across the West to discuss the very topical issue of how CCBC presents and follows up financial requests to our town and community councils. That was really appreciated. So thanks to everyone who presented and attended. At our more recent meeting, the theme was housing matters. Items relating to housing and flooding will be covered in more detail later in this meeting. And I'd like to thank Katie Clubb, James Harland and Owen Connery for all their work, but also particularly their willingness to share updates locally, together with progress as that affects us in our various local areas. I'd also like to take this opportunity to express how important the work of local area forums can be if given the correct support and recognition. So we've heard from Councillor Sherrill about what goes on in Central. At a meeting of this committee last year, there was a debate regarding the absorption of local regeneration boards into local area forums. And this met with a little bit of pushback from some members who felt that they would be less effective in both delivery and engagement if they were absorbed. I personally hope that this would not be the case. Delivering local projects for our communities with a common purpose and shared aims is so important. So I would make a heartfelt plea for members to attend, for officers to fully support emerging projects, and for us all to ensure that our local area forums become the vibrant vehicles for change that they could be to benefit our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Caffey. So do I have a proposer for these minutes, please? I'll go for the 2 sets of minutes. Proposer for both, please. See anybody? Councillor Sam is proposing someone to second those, please. Hannah, thank you very much. All those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Those minutes are noted. Local Area Forum East, you can see these in the agenda pack on pages 24 to 28. And I'm looking for these to be presented by either Councillor Kay Redhead or the Vice Chair Michael Smith. Is Councillor Kay online?
Hi, Chair. It's Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Michael. If you could present them, please.
Yeah, apologies. I've just arrived in from work, so apologies. I've just jumped on. But Local Area Forum East, I'm presenting them as a full record of the meeting. So for those that attended, if anyone would like to second, I'd like to propose them tonight.
Okay, so as Vice Chair, yes, you can propose them as true record. Do I have a seconder? Bernice, thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, those minutes are noted. And finally, we have Local Area Forum North, which again in the agenda pack you can find on pages 29. Pages 29 to 30. And I'm looking for these to be presented by Councillor Harry Saville.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think you've touched on the fact that the draft minutes are in the agenda pack. If anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, I'd suggest the committee note the draft minutes. Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you, Councillor Harry. So I need a proposer for that, please. And I've got Councillor Tom, seconded Councillor Mandy. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, so those have all been noted. So we now come to item 6 on the agenda, and that is questions to Cabinet Member. I do have a question. This is a question to Councillor Nigel Smith, Cabinet Member for Sustainable Economy, from Councillor Harry Saville. Just before I go to you, Harry, for the question, I just want to say that, looking at the rules on this, we're looking at no more than 10 minutes should be spent on this question. Under the rules and procedure of the question, it will be put without discussion. Councillor Saville, as a member asking the question, may ask a supplementary. So really, I'll hand over to you, Councillor Harry, if you'd like to put your question to the Cabinet Member.
Yes, again, thank you, Chair. As the question appears in the agenda, what assessment has the Cabinet Member for a Sustainable Economy made of the potential economic impact on the local economy of relocating Llandudno's library from Mostyn Street, Llandudno?
Councillor Nigel.
Diolch, Chair. Well, the decision to potentially move the library to a new culture hub was driven by the need by all departments to bring forward economic savings while trying to sustain their service. A report on the full project to develop the venue into a culture hub, potentially including the library, will be submitted to Democracy in due course. At present, we do not have a timescale, as this is subject to discussion with UK government regarding their processes. The report to members will include consideration on the revenue budget for the affected service, the capital budget, impacts on users, and wider impacts on the area and opportunities for service improvements. The results of the recent Llandudno library consultation will also form part of that consideration. This survey did include a question regarding responders' anticipated change in spend if the library should move. The Economic Development Team continue to work closely with partners to deliver improvements in Llandudno, and in the last 12 months, funding has been achieved for just over £1 million for Mostyn Estates for the old M&S building on Mostyn Street. Other investments in the town including the shelters along the promenade, refurbishing Llandudno's popular Alice Trail, and multiple business support and commercial property interventions in the town centre. We have also secured this week further funding for the building management system and external painting and some of the technical equipment in Venue Cymru, protecting this important asset which attracts over 300,000 people annually into the town and is responsible for £30 million of economic impact in the area each year. As Cabinet Member for Sustainable Economy, in these financially challenging times for all local authorities, I welcome the substantial savings and benefits the proposed library move could bring to help sustain the county's library service rather than see any further reduction in hours or possible further closures. I'm also greatly interested in what I consider could be a real opportunity to further refresh Mostyn Street should the new Culture Hub project proceed. You only have to look at the great success Mostyn Estates have had in bringing new business investment into the town, improving its properties, bringing more diverse offering for our residents and many visitors, while helping further create much needed employment opportunities in the county.
Thank you very much for that response, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Harry, you are allowed a supplementary related question, either whether it's from your original question or from the response that you've received from the Cabinet Member. Okay.
Yes, of course, Chair. And look, I'll begin by thanking the Cabinet Member for quite a comprehensive response there. I think there's some information that shows there is some work going on, which perhaps I certainly wasn't aware of, so I'd thank him for that. What I would like to probe a little bit further around is the enthusiasm for, I think as the Cabinet Member just described it, refreshing the offer on Mostyn Street. I recall when Cabinet discussed this back in July, the Cabinet Member was quite enthusiastic about this as well. Since then, we've had Mostyn Estates raise concerns in the press saying that they think relocating both the library and the Tourist Information Centre could result in 170,000 less visits to our high street. Now, obviously, a significant period of time has elapsed since July and now, So I'd be interested as to, is that enthusiasm on the part of the council? What discussions have the council been having with Moston Estates around what could replace the library if it were relocated?
Cabinet member.
Diolch, Chair. Well, I don't believe any conversations have been held regarding what could replace the library. Moston Estates are a commercial company with properties, extensive properties throughout Llandudno, which is a unique resort on the North Wales coast. I have every confidence, having seen the previous changes to the use of their properties, that they will bring something of quality to that unit should it be vacated, and this decision hasn't been made yet. Moston Estates have good quality units throughout the town, and you know the offerings are there to see for many people. The town centres are changing, people's needs are changing, and I think one of the things is if we literally half an hour ago we had the results of the library survey, and it's very telling, the makeup of the age of people that are using the library. It's in decline, and we need to try and address that decline and make it a better offering. And I genuinely believe that this culture hub makes that offer that isn't possible in the building where it is. That's not forgetting the savings that we need to bring forward as an authority. So yeah, that's about all really. Thank you.
Okay, well, Harry, you've asked a question, you've had a response, you've asked a supplementary, you've had the response from that. I'm sure this will continue. What I will say now is I'm going to go back to the agenda, which is item 7 on the agenda, which is to review the forward work programme and the combined forward work programme. And if I could hand over to, I'm not going to say Councillor Dawn then, to Dawn, please. Thanks, Dawn.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just advise you of a few changes since we last published the forward plan? So as you're aware, the deposit revised LDP was supposed to be coming to the next meeting on the 26th of March. However, Welsh Government needs to undertake some further work to review it. Therefore, it will need to be rescheduled for either June or July. We're just waiting for the timeline from Welsh Government. So once we know that, we will then need to organise a special meeting accordingly of this committee, and then obviously it will need to go to council. Therefore, we still have reports coming to the next meeting. We have the local flood risk strategy. We've got the consultation on the regional transport plan, and we also have the events and filming strategy. That's my update, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Dawn. So that's the forward work programme. So could I have a proposer for that, please? Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 35, the future management of bus services in Wales, I just see in that box it says date to be confirmed, but the date we have further along is the 21st of May. I'm quite interested to talk about the bus service and provision in the county. Is that definitely coming to us on Monday?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Then I'm happy to propose, Chair. Thank you.
Seconder, please. Councillor Louise. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? No. So that's the forward work programme. So thank you very much for that. We'll move on then to item 8, which is to consider a report by the head of strategic housing on the following matter, and that's an update on housing and homelessness. And I believe to introduce this, and actually then you're going to, Councillor Emily, you will also come back and present some of this report. So to start off with, if you could introduce, and then we'll just see how that goes. Yeah. So over to you.
Thanks, Councillor Mike. Can everyone hear me online? Yeah, nods, great. Okay, so I just thought it would be really, really useful to just have a quick run through where we are and how we got here. I'm really pleased that we're able to come here and present this tonight, because I think it's one of the few times that we're able to present exactly what we're doing within the housing team. And as you can see from the report, there's quite a lot of stuff going on. The housing crisis, as we all know, has been going on for way over a decade, and it's been deepening and deepening. We know that there's significant shortage of affordable homes, escalating property prices, and a growing number of individuals and families that are in need of housing. We know that several factors have contributed to this, but essentially demand has significantly outstripped supply. I will save political points for tomorrow, but essentially the right to buy policy allowed council tenants to purchase their own homes, and that led to a significant reduction in the availability of social housing, and nowhere has ever recovered back to going beyond those numbers. It has stopped, but we are still seeing a shortage of affordable homes, and there is that increased pressure on local government to provide temporary accommodation. You okay? Yeah, it's okay. No problem at all. So during COVID, we saw legislation changes in homelessness to ensure that those who were street homeless were accommodated, and at risk of street homeless were accommodated, and those legislative changes stayed in place. So we did see quite a spike in demand from that. But to be clear, housing is not a luxury. It's embedded in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it should be a fundamental human right that everyone is entitled to a safe and secure house and home. I'm really proud that we have some forward-thinking policies in Wales and in Conway, and we're trying to do that as person-centred as possible. However, there's no denying that they pose significant practical challenges, and that demand and supply issue is growing. I think that everyone in this room and beyond, I know there's lots of councillors that are really interested in housing because it impacts everybody in some way, shape or form, and there's lots of residents that are really struggling with their housing situation. But we also need to remember that homelessness is usually a symptom of other issues, be that poverty, inequality, health. And we need to address some of the societal changes, as well as dealing with the immediate issue, which is people having somewhere to call home. So we've got the team here today in force. So thank you very much for coming in, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to answer a wide variety of questions on this. I'm really pleased that they're all here tonight, because they are wonderful, and so are the rest of the housing team that work with us. We have a really good partnership working, as myself as cabinet member and the team, and it really is a team effort, and I'm really proud to be part of the housing and homeless team in Conway. So I'll hand to Katie so she can run through some of the report, and then she'll just flip back to me before we go to questions.
Yeah, okay. So I'll hand over to Katie, but before I do, I'm going to have to put on record that my thanks to the team. The most difficult phone call a councillor gets, in my opinion, is I wonder if you can help me. I'm losing my house, or and it's very difficult. So to see the team is great, and I personally thank you for what you're doing and for the residents. Being homeless, it's a bit of a stigma. Of a title, and we have no fault evictions, etc. As people, could be me one day, so it's just grateful for what you do. And Katie, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Yeah, really pleased to be bringing this report, providing an update on the work across our housing and homeless teams, and it's really useful that Councillor Emily set that context. I wanted to start with that whilst we're bringing a report around developments and progress. It remains a really challenging time, and it's important to acknowledge there are too many people in Conway currently without a decent home, and too many people remain living in temporary accommodation. It is a national crisis. Wales faces a homelessness crisis driven by a range of socio-economic factors. Last year, statutory homelessness in Wales reached record levels. Temporary accommodation was significantly higher last year than the previous year. So that is the direction. It's not a Conway issue. We are in a national housing crisis. So this report sets out what we've been doing over the past months to ensure that in Conway, internally with our internal partners and our external partners, we're well structured and we have the right services in place to meet that challenge that we have. So in the report, it will look like there's a lot of different things going on, but I think in terms of trying to simplify that, a lot of things either fall into our two kind of key areas of focus. That is to increase the supply of homes, full stop, but increase the supply of affordable homes, and early intervention and prevention and providing that right support when people need it. So ultimately, we do need more homes and we need that early intervention and prevention. But both of those things take time and they don't happen overnight. And there's been a lot of work, and we recognise in the report, a lot of groundwork has had to happen for those things to develop. So the third kind of pillar we have at the moment is, in recognition of that, we know that there will be a period of time where households do remain in temporary accommodation. So our third key area of focus currently is the transformation of temporary accommodation. So I'm going to touch on, from out of the report, some of the key areas I wanted to raise from those sort of three areas: the increasing supply, prevention, and the transformation of temporary accommodation. So in terms of supply, we know that everybody here will know that Conway was heavily impacted by the difficulties experienced by developers seeing stalled sites post-COVID. That has had a significant impact, a direct impact on the delivery of new build homes delivered into management over this year and the previous year with really low numbers. And that's had a direct impact on our ability to move people on out of temporary accommodation. You'll see in the report the success the team have had in terms of maximising grant for new supply in the past years. And you'll see in the report as well how positive that upturn is in the delivery of new affordable homes over the next 3 years. 674 projected through our social housing grant programme. The Housing and Homeless Programme Board are also overseeing the work to bring council-owned sites into use to develop affordable homes too, and that is the subject of a separate report that comes to Finance and Resource Scrutiny Committee. So I think in terms of new supply, it's really important, although that looks really positive in terms of that movement now coming out of that period, is that we don't just rely on new build delivery. There's a really important potential around bringing or making best use of what we already have. So alongside the work that the committee will be more familiar with in terms of the work of our empty homes team, bringing empty homes back into use. Again, we hit one of our highest numbers last year in terms of bringing those homes back into use. Welsh Government's also made available the TACP capital grant, which allows us councils and RSLs to acquire and refurbish homes off the open market to use as social housing. This has been a real opportunity to bring homes on sooner than through development and match to that immediate pressure. So in the first year of TACP, we focused on larger families. We knew we had lots of larger families who were stuck in temporary accommodation, and that's where we were able to target, and in those following months, bring those homes into use. Again, this year, the funding will bring 34 additional homes in the coming months ahead. And in the report, an area again, which I think the committee may be less familiar with, is the Welsh Government's leasing scheme Wales. This is a scheme we've seen a lot of work over the past months. We've targeted resource in the team to try and encourage landlords on. So landlords can lease a property to the council. They can access grants to bring the property up to standard in return for letting that property at a local housing allowance and committing to a certain period of time. So this is not temporary accommodation. This does give the potential for another pipeline of affordable options for individuals to help us move people out of temporary accommodation. We were really pleased with the response we had. I wasn't as positive there would be that many private landlords out there, so we were really happy with the interest we've had. We know many of that will fall away, but with that intense resource carrying on, there's a real potential here to see a new supply of housing that we haven't seen before. And then another area that we're working on with our RSL partners, and Conway has been talking to other local authorities about this potential, is around the potential that exists within our existing social homes. I think many of you will be aware we have some homes that are underoccupied. We have some schemes that aren't as fit for purpose as what they were intended for. We have issues in terms of understanding need in our rural communities. So there's a lot of work going on. We're asking our RSL partners to work together to scope that potential for redesignation, for the flexibility to flip tenures, to have a look at how we map and link new developments to right sizing of properties to release family homes. So we are still in the early stages of mapping what that potential is in terms of releasing more supply of the homes we need through our existing social housing. And obviously the work underway at the moment to review our allocations policy will ensure that we're allocating those social homes to those who most need it. So that's everything I wanted to pull out from the supply side. So in terms of prevention and support, there has been lots of work in the team over the past months to structure the team appropriately. It's really important that we are able to refocus. One of the big ambitions here is to refocus and be able to move upstream and have a look at that prevention and intervention. We had a review of the service and the application of the legislation. Again, it's really important that those households who can resolve their own housing options don't overwhelm a service that needs to focus on individuals in the most need. You'll see in the report that the team have a really high prevention success rate, but still far too many people approach the service too late for that prevention to be able to work. And that's where we want to move and rebalance our resource and investment. So a lot of work in terms of our housing support grant over the past months has been to review the use of that grant and rebalance that work. We've got a commissioning plan now, which makes some clear proposals around decommissioning some services that are not seen as strategically relevant so that we can reinvest those funds in early intervention services. We want to look outwards and look at our external partners as well and look at innovative and creative ways of delivering these services. A golden thread through the work on our housing support grant is around that join up collaboration with social care. We want to link and have much closer alignment of roles out in family centres and really catching, and as Councillor Emily said before, some of those root core issues that we can catch and provide support with before it becomes a crisis, before people become homeless at all. And it is that work and that shift that we believe will start to see that reduction in people placed into temporary accommodation alongside that increase in supply. So we have seen in the structure some additional frontline roles will be more focused on prevention. We've got some roles that will focus specifically on individuals and households who come through and present with more complex needs linked to trauma experience, so that we don't expect everybody to go through the same service when some people need a more tailored approach in terms of how we manage their cases. So finally, as I said, I'm really pleased with the progress we've made. I'm really pleased with the new structure of the service and how that will help us drive that change. But we know that it will take time and we will need temporary accommodation for some time. So a big ambition for us is that we transform our use of temporary accommodation from how it currently is. The figures, and you can see in the report, show that numbers fluctuate currently. At the end of this year, it looks like we're projected to remain just below the level at the start of the year. Over the past 5 years, there has been a significant increase in temporary accommodation. A priority for us has been to avoid bed and breakfast settings, particularly for children. We've been trying to identify self-contained options. Some options which we had shifted to are not sustainable, and we need to move away from those, and our focus remains on growing sustainable and more affordable options. The priority for us will be the provision of high quality self-contained accommodation which provides privacy, cooking facilities and an environment that does not impact children's well-being or educational attainment. You'll see in the report as well, obviously the majority of households we currently have in bed and breakfast are single people, a really difficult group at the moment to move on, a real shortage in particular of supply of that size accommodation. And we've done a lot of work this year to prepare ourselves to move on and find alternative temporary accommodation. We've been aligning our capital and revenue grant funding so that we can develop new temporary supported shared housing settings, and we've got it's currently out on Sell to Wales Live, an invite to invite other providers to come and share with us options for models that we can develop so that we are no longer using bed and breakfast accommodation, which isn't seen as suitable. And this is the work that we've been undertaking across those three main areas. As you'll see in the report, there's lots of other areas there, the bits I wanted to pull out. It's from these areas that we'll be building on in terms of our 5-year strategy moving forward. Obviously, comments and questions today will help feed in and inform that. Obviously, as Emily said, I've got the whole team here in case anyone has questions. So we have a wealth of knowledge here, and I'll hand back over to Emily to finish off.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, I think just touching on that Tempcom, I think we all know that being in Tempcom is really, really difficult, and it's really hard when you don't have that level of stability to build any further with where you're going with anything. So that's really important, and I think that I'm not looking at Ash while I say this because I can feel the pressure already, but I'm confident that with the plan that we've got, that I can be sat here in 2 years saying that we no longer use bed and breakfast for Tempcom. It's a really big, bold ambition, but it's one that we absolutely need to do so that we can provide more suitable accommodation for people to continue to live their lives with. I just wanted to touch quickly on the influencing and engagement that we've been doing regionally and nationally, because it's something that's been really important to us to be able to get involved, because we do recognise that this isn't just an individual problem within Conway, and I'm very much in favour of well, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's see what other people are doing. If it works, we can pinch it. If it doesn't work, we can learn from it. So we've had a deep dive. Welsh Government have been working with us on a deep dive because of how well we've done with our local housing market assessment, and we were one of the first to complete that in Wales. They were incredibly impressed with how we've done it, how we've linked in with all our other services and our planning policy and planning and all the other services within the council. So hats off to Anna and Jude for all their work on that, and Welsh Government are using that now as an example to other authorities as to good practice. We've had Katie and I went down to do the Senedd inquiry to feed in to their committee in regards to some of the recommendations that went to Welsh Government about how they can improve accommodation. We have been to Shelter Conference last year, and we'll be at Thai Conference in a month or so, as well, sharing best practice where other local authorities are looking at what we're doing to see if they can replicate what we're doing. We've had some really good wins with, you'll see in the report of the funding that has come in with SHG and TACP, and we're punching way above our weight on that. And we've also lobbied Welsh Government for an increase in SHG funding, which is housing support grant, which is all the prevention stuff that we were referring to earlier, because we all recognise that prevention is really key, and I'm really proud of our team with the success rate on that, because they're doing a really good job with it within there. So and I'd just like to finish by saying we recognise that obviously this is a joint solution. We're not going to be able to solve the housing crisis on our own in Conway over here, so we are really engaged and we work really well with our partners. We set up a strategic partnership group with the RSLs, the Registered Social Landlords or Housing Associations, and we meet with those regularly to agree actions moving forward about how we can join up, how we can work together. And one of the things that I have spoken to them about recently is I know members would like some more engagement with the RSLs, and they've agreed to set up in once a month in Cwdpella, where we can have a drop-in session where members have access there, so they can go and speak to them about any constituent housing concerns, and we can also raise anything that's going on within their wards, within their areas at the time, so we can have like a really open discussion, so there's more accessibility to that. Katie's already said that the comments from today will feed into our strategy, and I'm really keen, and I know the team are as well, that we take nothing about us without us approach, and we want to make sure that the service user voice is at the heart of our strategy, so there'll be lots of engagement with service users as well as councillors and other stakeholders. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and the team.
Okay, no, wow. Thank you very much for the work, the extensive work that's going on. and the grants that we're receiving, probably down to that hard work. It's clear to me the amount of work that you and the team are doing, and I just look at the recommendation as like we note the update, and I just think that doesn't do it justice. Yeah, I'll open up to debate shortly, and I'm just saying, so councillors also, even from tonight, will be able to have input into the strategy, because as I say, this is just an update and it's for noting tonight. So that will be put in place. So that's gratefully received. I'm going to open up the debate, and I believe I've got Councillor Simon online.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Great report. Good to see so much progress being made. The question I would have about empty properties, and I've been banging on about this for some time, empty flats above shops. There still seem to be a heck of a lot of them. I wonder if we are doing any work on persuading landlords and commercial residents of the amount of rent that they could that could help their bottom line and help their business survive in the current financial straitened circumstances of the high street. Particularly, perhaps we could help get the help of Mostyn Estates to engage land unit holders and business holders in Llandudno, for instance. It's something I would really think is an open door we should be pushing on, even though it's probably not easy to persuade them. But if we could provide grants for refurbishment and make it easy for them, I'm sure a lot of them would jump at it. Thank you.
Councillor Emily, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you. This is something that that is raised a lot. I know Councillor Chris has been a huge advocate for this as well, and it's something that we raised with Welsh Government when we were during the Senedd inquiry about a real opportunity. It is quite difficult with bringing them into to social use at the moment because of the standards and the requirements in order to meet them, but it is definitely something that are looking at. Welsh Government are having like a small project team within their offices to see what they can do, because there is untapped potential there. But I'll just hand over to Lindsay. I don't know if she wants to add any more just in general about the empty homes stuff that we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Emily. I'm Empty Homes Officer at Conway Council. We do have available funds for owners of empty properties, both residential and commercial, where they can convert them into residential. We do promote those schemes, those funds that are available. Obviously, it's down to those owners whether they take up those offers. What we tend to find with the conversions is that the costs are a lot higher than a standard renovation. So the loans that we have available aren't really what they're looking for. It is the grants. So we are applying for more funding to be able to offer grants to support work in those areas. We're currently in the process of writing our new empty home strategy, and we are looking at having a bigger focus on those types of properties as well. We do meet, or myself, I meet regularly with Welsh Government as part of a town centre regeneration group. And that is in relation to bringing housing into town centres. So there's lots of work going on in that area, and hopefully over the coming sort of year or so, we'll start to see progress there.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just go. I've got a number of councillors that want to ask some questions. So I've got, next is Councillor Keith online, then I've got Louise, Tom, Paul, Kathy and Hannah. So Councillor Keith online.
Diolch, Mike. First and foremost, thank you, Katie, for the report and the rest of the team. Also, I'd like to thank Lindsay as well for a massive amount of work that she's been doing for me with a couple of properties in Llandudno. I know there's been some work gone on with enforcement on properties. The two in Llandudno seem to be a little bit unique in the owner is absent and just not responding to any sort of correspondence. and I wonder whether there was anything easier coming from me.
Keith, can I just but I am just a little bit mindful that about identifying actual properties or addresses. I just want.
It was. I won't mention the addresses or obviously the name of the people. It was just the situation that seems to be holding the process up. So I was just wondering whether it had changed or not. You see, a question either for Lindsay if she's familiar with this or Katie regarding the policy trying to get a property back into use if the owner's not responding.
Okay, Keith, could I ask that perhaps that this question that you do that outside this meeting, and then I don't know if whichever way we can contact if you can.
I do know which properties you refer to. Would it be okay if I emailed you outside of this?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
with an update.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Keith.
Okay,
I
no
appreciate the way you've accepted that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I've got. Sorry, Keith.
No, it's fine.
Okay, cheers. Councillor Louise.
Yeah, thank you for the report. There's lots of good stuff in it, definitely. You clearly have real grip of the service, Katie. Well done. I think I can see a big positive. The one thing I think I've got some questions about the allocation policy and the prevention work, but the first question was, Ryan, what I was looking for, which maybe you've missed in this report, is like a financial appendix of what money that we have put into housing through our business cases. And how that looks. So we've got lots of good work here, and I was kind of scrolling down, wanting the sort of the financial assessment. If we go back in time, 23-24, it was £1 million request business case. 24-25, 859k. 25-26, 0. Unless I've missed it somewhere, which is great news. But it would be good to just see that graph of how you're spending the money. So I don't know whether that can come to us at some point. That's my first point.
I'm getting nods there, so yes, it will come to you.
Just be useful to have
that
information, so we can see that actually all the good stuff relates down to pounds and pence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So exactly good.
Okay, that's fine.
So on the allocation policy, I mean, that is the key when we get these phone calls. People say, well, can you get me up the list? Where am I on the list? And I don't really understand the allocation policy in detail as a councillor. Maybe I should, but the new policy is going to be complete in May 2020, and obviously this is in partnership with other councils. So is that something that we have any say on as councillors, or is it some national policy? How does it work, allocation policy?
Okay, yeah, it won't be complete. The review will be complete. So there'll be sort of recommendations. So we've currently got, in partnership with two other local authorities and all the RSL partners, we're reviewing our common allocations policy. There are rules in the sense of the Housing Act. It has to be compliant to any policy that we have, but beyond that there are choices, and there will be lots of engagement with local councillors. That knowledge, I think we all know, and it's probably one of the biggest contact areas we have in housing. The SART policy as is was launched in 2015. It was a different world. So some of that policy and some of what was trying to be achieved then isn't fit for purpose today. And I know that and there'll be many councillors here saying I'm aware, because we've had conversations about that. So that feed in from local knowledge will be really important. We're really keen to maintain it's really well thought of. We're the only sub-regional policy in Wales where we have a common approach to our social allocations. There is ability within that to have other layers of local lettings to meet certain local needs. So there is potential for shift. I'm really hopeful this will be a really positive change. It's a really complex area, and it's a really contentious area, because we're basically at the moment talking about how do we allocate a scarce resource with a very high demand, and how do we prioritise? So yeah, there'll be lots of opportunity for discussion, and we'll be putting out very soon some engagement sessions for councillors to come and feed in and help shape what that looks like. And I think we're expecting it to be quite different from how it currently looks as well.
Yeah, final point.
Okay, could I just ask you to speak into the mic?
Sorry, yeah, final point, if I may, was about the prevention. 3.2.3, I think it's page 71, positive prevention outcomes. Homelessness was successfully prevented 82.9% of cases. That seems remarkably high. Could you just explain what that involves? What do you mean by you've prevented that? How do you know the scenario? You're late on your rent, you forget about it, you think, oh, I'll find the money next month. It's a long process until you run out of options, or is that based on not just not paying the rent? Give me an example.
Thank you. So yes, so in terms of the prevention figure, so statutory prevention is 56 days, but we generally within the team take the approach of trying to, if we can, engage at the earliest point. So, and there's no kind of end date on how long a prevention duty lasts. It's until we either successfully relieve, somebody refuses an offer, or they disengage from the service. So some of our prevention cases can be open to the team, you know, for 6 months or so while we're trying to work with them and get the resolution. So one of the big things and one of the reasons why we have that sort of high prevention rate within the team is we do get grant funding from Welsh Government for the Homeless Prevention Fund, HPF. So that's a big one for us, where households we're working with, we, you know, based on financial assessment, we can look at things like helping with rent arrears potentially, if that's going to save a tenancy. There may be some low level repairs that we can do to make a property more suitable, or an adaptation, which means somebody can stay in their home. We also have it as well in terms of if we can't prevent the home that they're currently in, work with them to find an alternative permanent option rather than entering temporary accommodation. So that then may also include us helping out with things like deposits, rent in advance, rent top-ups for a period. We've had cases where someone perhaps has lost their job, they can't afford the rent, so we'll pay the top-up for that period until they secure further employment, and then can then afford to pay the top-up themselves to prevent them coming into the service. So we also work very closely with the housing support grant team, so support agencies. A lot of people just need some support to get back on their feet. So prevention doesn't mean just prevention keeping at home. It can also mean prevention in terms of rehousing, but not hitting temporary accommodation, if that makes sense.
So can I be sort of reassured that the scenario where somebody gets into an amount of debt and sort of knows that the council will come along and pay the rent arrears and all will be well, can I be reassured that taxpayers' money isn't just going to pay off arrears and then they get into arrears again, that this is, you know, that people we can't keep rescuing people, you know, from that point of view? That's slightly worrying.
Yes, so the Homeless Prevention Fund that we have, it is an application. So an officer will undertake that assessment. We basically, as part of that assessment, we've got to work out how has that situation arise, what's caused the issues, what are the problems, and we also have to assess kind of what potential support needs or support gaps there are in that household. So all of that combined, then the officer then kind of works with that individual to draw up a personal housing plan, and that's kind of the right, what are you going to do, how are you going to take some responsibility for this situation to resolve it, but equally what are some things that perhaps only us as a local authority can kind of help you to do in the short term. And that kind of personal housing plan is very much a two-way street in terms of there's things that they're going to have to do as well. What we often find as well with regards to prevention cases, if somebody will never be able to afford that rent or afford that top up, then we would never look to sort of pay somebody's rent arrears. We would look at alternative options, or some of those households, which obviously it's not 100% successful prevention, some of those may well then be households that do go on to become homeless and will enter temporary accommodation because there isn't a sustainable prevention option. If we have those repeat prevention presentations and people come back to us having previously had a homeless prevention fund or support to resolve the issues, and it's the same scenario again, then absolutely those are the cases that we look at a lot closer. And on those occasions, we may not then agree to pay that additional top up. But sometimes we have also got to weigh up what's the cost of paying somebody's arrears again versus the cost and the trauma of going back into temporary accommodation. So they're very much judgment calls on individual basis. But yeah, no, by no means do we want to be a revolving door or a way for people to not pay their rent, and we'll rescue them. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you for those questions. Thanks for the response. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, just want to echo what's already been said about the great work that's going on in that team. Emily and Katie, I recall speaking quite a while ago about how keen I was to see some of this stuff come before members who are really, really keen that it has, and I'm pleased for that, so thank you. I've got a couple of points here, if you wouldn't mind if I take them in turn, if that's okay. I think Katie and Emily probably know what my first one is going to be. It's about 1-bedroom properties. Over the 2 years mentioned in the report, doing my quick maths, it comes out that 55% of the houses that are going to be built on those sites are going to be 1-bedrooms, and I take the point that the majority of people who are in temporary housing are single people or people who are in a couple that would that would suit the one bedroom housing need. I accept that. But my concern is what we do beyond that. Is that if it's generally a young person who is single or in a relationship that we put in a one bedroom house or flat, the utility of that building, that unit, is only useful until they go on to extend their family, which is pretty commonplace. So you've resolved the homelessness issue, you've moved them into one bed, that's great, but in 2 or 3 years' time, they're going to be presenting again to the housing team saying, I've had a couple of kids, I'm now overcrowded. So actually that pressure hasn't been resolved, it's just shifted. And it concerns me that then we get to the point where actually we're then moving them back out of that unit and moving them to another unit. So they're not becoming settled within a place because they're being lifted and moved across the county as their housing need changes, where actually I think it would be more beneficial and the units would be of greater utility to us if they were 2 or 3 bedroom houses where actually we can settle people in for a longer period of time. And I'm just concerned that 55% of the units that we've invested in to build are going to be 1 bedroom units. We can't build those houses again. So that's my first point.
Can I let Councillor Emily come back on that?
Thanks, Councillor Tom. And when we talk about that, it makes sense, doesn't it, to be looking at in the future. The problem we've got is bedroom tax. So if you are putting someone in a property that's got more bedrooms, there we then have that as a problem where we can't do it. There's also issues at the moment where it's difficult to work around a policy for some areas and not another. So we have to have a policy in place to make sure that that's doable. But I do take your point that that sometimes it's quite a difficult one, knowing what's coming in a few years. But we can't equally, it's quite a difficult argument to have of future-proofing homes for everybody. You know, we can't say to people, you had a 4-bedroom property and you are now in a 4-bedroom property and there's only one of you now, you have to move out. And we can encourage it and we can do things to try and make it enticing to move out. But people don't have to. So it is a difficult one where you've got a mishmash of who's in what type of property, but it's the kind of where do you stop on it of you know, how many children are you going to have? Can you tell me how many children? You know, it's that kind of stuff where you kind of, if you start going down a route, it's quite a tricky one to try and go, well, where do you stop and how do you do it for different people? So it is, I understand what you're saying about that 1 bed and then where do you move on to, and we do have to do different options for those people in 1 beds. I don't think that we can just keep moving forward by saying, well, we need more 1-bed flats and that's the end of that conversation. We've got to look at other alternatives to do. I don't know if Katie wants to add anything else on that one.
Only to follow up that it's something that I go on quite a lot about, and obviously the work we've been doing around that planned no pilot is trying to understand. So when I talked about that best use of existing homes, that's something that comes to my mind all the time. We have a lot of existing 2-bed properties and some of those are flats and above ground level, and they're not always now, with all the changes around fire legislation and waste management, they're not ideal for families and they would make great homes for single households. It's just that flexibility and how we do that, whether that's flipping 10 years, whether that's using other ways of ensuring that we can provide that sustainability for the RSL landlord and obviously the individual in terms of affordability. But it's something that we're really actively exploring, because actually that more balanced mix of homes coming forward would make more sense as well if we were using some of our stock that once upon a time might have been ideal for house families, but now would actually better suit single households because the nature of those flats.
Want me to come back? Another question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got a couple more points if that's okay. But thanks for that response. I do appreciate that, and I think we are kind of on the same page there. It's just drawing that line of where is the line to say that is actually too much. I mean, in 2022, 23 or 23, 24, I think the figure was 65% of the houses in that year were going to be 1-bedroom flats, and that's where I just get a bit nervous to say, well, actually that's going too far the other way. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm going to move on if that's okay, Chair. So I think the report's great. The work that you're doing is great. would have liked to see in the report the other side of the housing pressure there, which is people who are currently housed, but it's not appropriate housing. And what I mean by that is overcrowded, or people who are still with young families having to live with their parents who haven't necessarily declared themselves homeless yet because they still have a roof over their head. But actually, I think we can all accept that the housing position that they're in is not appropriate or acceptable. And for me, I believe that housing isn't just about having a roof over your head. It's so critical to so many other aspects of someone's life. And actually, if we upstick someone and move them to the other side of the county, and you move them away from their job, and they don't necessarily have access to a personal car, so they have to rely on public transport, you can put that job at risk. If they have young children, you put their placement in that school at risk. Is there extra costs with home to school transport? There's a whole host of things that come to mind, and really, I'd quite welcome the opportunity for a report or an update about the housing allocation policy that we currently have, and after this review is done in May of this year, the recommendations coming from that, so councillors can have a better understanding of what the policy currently is. Because, like we've spoke about separately, I personally don't believe that the current policy delivers the best outcomes for people. Yes, on our database we say, oh well, actually those people are housed, but actually we've housed them in a place that isn't suitable for them. It's away from their work, it's away from the school, it's away from the support network, and that has a detrimental impact on other areas that the local authority has to engage with people on. So yeah, I did actually want to make a proposal, Chair, for a report to come before us here that looks at the housing allocation policy that we currently have, and taking into account the recommendations that come out of the review in May. So yeah, I'd like to make that proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, you're entitled, obviously, to make a proposal. I'm just wondering whether it'd be some sort of item for member development or some, I don't know. Councillor Emily, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just what you're asking for, the data and things like that. I think, I mean, I have no problem with supplying that, and I think it would be useful to do that around. There's going to be quite an extensive piece of council engagement about the new SART allocation policy, and I think it's really timely that you see that data ahead of making any recommendations within that and having a steer on it. So really happy to share that. I don't know if you want it as a report here, because it's kind of data, but it's entirely up to you what you want. I don't know if you've got a view, Katie.
I think because we're going through the review of the policy, that will come. But I think I just want to say I totally accept that point. And I think sometimes this can feel quite focused around temporary accommodation. And we're well aware that there are individuals who don't go into temporary accommodation and their household circumstances are difficult. And I think that's maybe not been fairly reflected in this report. So I'll take that on in terms of coming back. But I would suggest that we will be bringing through democracy anyway. At some point it will be a cabinet decision to change any the policy, so there will be a process through, so we can do that. But obviously if people want in the interim, so we have all that data in terms of households from the current policy as well.
Are you happy to receive that information? I don't think it needs to come to a meeting. The whole point of tonight is to update that, and obviously I'm getting to the right of me. You're taking that on board. What you're saying, and that information will be in the final report on housing homeless. But whether you want, I'm just wondering whether it's just an information forum instead of coming to a scrutiny committee.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for the information to be shared with members. It was more, the point was that I want to ensure that members have an opportunity in a forum such as this to engage and input into that new process, because I do think, like you mentioned earlier, that the current sort of allocation policy isn't fit for purpose, and I'd quite like to be able to have my put my 10 pence worth in there as well. Okay, thank you.
I think I'm looking across. I think you'll probably get more than 10 pence worth, but so yeah, they take that on board. No, I appreciate your response here. That it's just putting another report on this scrutiny that perhaps doesn't need to come. So thanks, Tom. So as it is now, I've got Paul, Kathy, Hannah, Chris, and Sam. So I am getting mindful of time, but I will not suppress the meeting as such. But just if you could be brief with the questions or anything you have to say. So as I say, Paul, Kathy, Hannah, Chris, Sam, Paul.
I'm going to drill down on one or two things, but I just want to start by commending Councillor Emily for her political leadership on this. This is, in my view, maybe the toughest challenge we have in Conway. And I think she's made a real difference since I've been a councillor in May 22. So I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge, well, part of that process was to get a strategic director of housing. We've now got a strategic director of housing, and I want to commend the professional leadership of Katie since her appointment, and the work of the staff. And like you said at the beginning, Chair, the staff do a great job when we as councillors come across often very difficult and distressing cases, and I'm very grateful for their work. So just to drill down on some issues, obviously the RSLs are very significant players in this situation, and I don't think personally they're scrutinised enough. I would suggest to this committee, and I'm not a member of this committee, but I would suggest we haul the RSLs in at least once a year, like we do Betsy and other things.
Paul, I'm being told that that's going to be on the agenda for the chairs and vice chairs. Where you go in there with the RSLs.
Oh well, so I didn't know that.
No,
So
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
but one of the issues that really worries me is that as of today, as I understand, and to be honest, I find getting data out of housing pretty straightforward. They let you tell you as it is. There are 27 children presently living in emergency accommodation. There are 137 children living in temporary accommodation. But I really want to drill down on this TACB, because when I was on the board, I do remember that we were making some progress with the RSLs on the purchase and conversion of housing. But I'd like Emily and Katie to reassure me that they are still fully on board, and most importantly for next year, TACP monies, they are as proactive as we want them to be. So that's a key issue for me. The other issue is when we're actually dealing with casework, if you like. My concern is, and I don't know whether we will have a new business case, but we do put those housing staff dealing with our residents who've got many issues of living. Many of them may have enduring mental health needs or enduring physical health needs, other issues like domestic violence, etc. That in those situations, I am not persuaded that we have enough staff to give the detailed attention to those individuals. I just noticed that Flintshire, even in their budget, have just doubled their homeless team of staff. So I think that is another area we do need to look at, because I want to see highly skilled, knowledgeable people with the micro skills to work with these very vulnerable people effectively. So there's sort of two questions there, really. Be grateful for the answers.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Emily.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Paul, and thanks for your input. You are very active within the service, and your points are very well made, and it's very helpful to have that gentle scrutiny, supportive scrutiny, as we're in the day-to-day running of the service. The TACP for RSLs, it has been difficult. I'm tell it as it is. It has been difficult this year to get that full allocation spent. We've done it, but it's not been easy. TACP was kind of designed around to be able to deal with the urgent problem and the problems now, which is why it is it's the grant that's used for acquisitions. But it has been quite a challenge to spend all that this year. I am slightly concerned about how we're going to spend that next year, and we're going to work closely with our RSL partners. They are trying. We do work closely with them, and it's going to be one of the topics on our strategic partnership, next strategic partnership meeting, as to how we can best use that grant, how we can be smarter, clever. If that means I have to approach Welsh Government and ask to use it in a different way, then we have to do that. But it hasn't been the easiest one to do. I'll just touch on staffing now, and then I'll see if any of the team want to add any of the rest of it. Staffing wise, Paul, if I could double the team tomorrow, I would do a heartbeat. But it's all on financial constraints, as you know, and we have had a restructure that's nowhere near large enough. It's nowhere near enough, but we have had some additional staff in this year in order to try and relieve that pressure, because it is difficult when they've got huge caseloads within that team, and they are trying very hard to deal with the pressure that's in front of us. And we've got a specific post now for those complex cases, where they can have a much smaller caseload, with the recognition that the time that it takes to give those individuals the time that they need. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to come in on TACP or staffing.
I think you've covered that, Emily, to be honest with you. I think you've well covered that. So I've got a number of people wanting to ask questions. So I've got Councillor Caffey online, then it'll be Councillor Hannah, Chris, Sam and Cheryl.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for letting me speak. I'd like to pick up on a point that Katie made earlier and highlight the aspect of housing, working with social care. Since taking the Cabinet portfolio for children, families and safeguarding, I've been working extremely closely with Councillor Emily and Katie, as well, of course, Councillor Penny, and our wonderful heads of service, Steph and Kat. Our work is completely intertwined with a joint housing and homelessness working group, and attendance by all of us at various project boards that cover our portfolio work. And of course, we jointly make provision for vulnerable children and adults, who are the fundamental focus of our work, in partnership across those three portfolios. In social care and housing, we all manage scarce resource and high demand, so we understand each other's challenges, share our expertise. Councillor Paul has just raised the issue of the numbers of children we have in temporary accommodation, as well as vulnerable people. And of course, that responsibility and provision is shared across our three portfolios. So I'd like to highlight that and the close working relationship we have in order to solve those problems. So many thanks to Councillor Emily, Katie, all members of the team who are here this evening, for their positive, collaborative approach to joint working, decision-making and solutions for our most vulnerable people. We couldn't do it without each other. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Caffey. Councillor Hannah online from Switzerland. I don't know where
Not
you
in Switzerland, no, I'm not. Thank you very much. They're fantastic achievements, and you've done this in such a short time. You're tackling an issue from so many directions. You're thorough, it's innovative, and I love that it's person-centred. And it's so impressive that Conway is now sector leading in this area, and to have you working with Welsh Government, to have you setting the example for other authorities to work from, the collaborative working, that's really to be praised, especially for such a short team in such a short time. I really welcome the monthly meeting with the RSLs. It's always, as Mike said earlier, really distressing when you have a resident who's upset and it's very difficult sometimes for us councillors to know exactly who to go to. And so to be able to talk to those RSLs, be able to even about a minor issue that someone's going on, that's just so helpful. Really, really, really positive. And they're small things, but they make a very real difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hannah. Chris Hughes in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. I've, over the past 25 years of my membership of this council, housing has been at the very core of an awful lot of what I've done, from being vice chair of a housing committee through to having older persons housing within my cabinet portfolio to serving on the board of Cartrefi Conway for 9 years. And I was very critical of the previous administration. I make no apologies for saying that. I was very critical of some of the officers within that administration for not seeing what was coming, and for raising the fact that we were solely focused on trying to get a private sector to deliver that couldn't afford to deliver because of the various things that were going on. And we just were failing our residents. Over the last 3 years, as your representative on the Housing and Homelessness Board, I think the word transformational is used too much in my life, in my opinion. However, it's the only word I can use to describe what's gone on in that department. We now understand, and the people working in the team have the similar understanding of where we need to go as an authority, led by the chief executive, to give it that impetus. We're seeing changes that I didn't think that I would see in my lifetime because on my term of office in this council, because we simply weren't going anywhere last couple of years ago. But what we're seeing now, and the numbers of properties we're seeing starting to come through, and we're actually dealing with the real problems, and that's down to the leadership that we have there from Emily and from in particular Katie and the team. It is fantastic, and I'm in awe. I go to the homeless board, and every time I think I've got a question on this, I've got a question on that. They're so thorough that you're thinking, what can I ask a question on, just to because the reports are fantastic, and they completely understand where we need to be going as an authority to address the major problems that we have. And I'm so proud of what they're achieving. And yeah.
Thank you for that, Chris. And I understand some of what you're saying is it was so easy back in the day, if I say that, to say you'd be better off getting a house if you go private, and that's come back to bite us quite viciously on the backside. Councillor Sam online, and then Councillor Cheryl, and I'm going to go to the next report because there's another big report, so I'm going to close up for questions. So Councillor Sam, Cheryl, and then I will come to a close on this item.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the report. There was an awful lot of information in there to digest. I've got a couple of questions. I'll probably do them back to front, really. I suppose following on from what Councillor Tom and a number of other councillors have referred to about the temporary accommodation and in regard to children in temporary accommodation, I was interested to know, number one, what types of accommodation are coming forward to use as temporary accommodation. And number two, the number of children on the bar graph that we've seen, I think it was page 74, the number of children in temporary accommodation in that, I think it's a 6-month period, remains pretty constant. And I was wondering what the sort of age range of, what the cutoff point for a child is. Could it be a 16-year-old who finds themselves on their own and in need of a 1-bedroom property, because we clearly don't have enough properties coming forward for family situations, you know, adults and children, to remove those people from the temporary housing register. So it was just to get a bit more information about that. And then the other question I had was around the social housing grants, the SHG, and understanding a bit more information about when we receive that grant, when we're awarded that grant, is that enough money to satisfy the projects that you have allocated under that grant? Because there's an additional in 3.1.4, an additional nearly £9 million of what's called slippage. I'm guessing that's somebody found some extra money somewhere, and the Welsh Government have dished that out. Can the projects be satisfied without getting that money? And the slippage money, do we have to use that under the same terms as we would a grant allocation, i.e. within a time limit, or can that be carried over to future projects? I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Emily, and perhaps Kate may come in as well. So Councillor Emily, please.
Thanks, Councillor Sam. Yeah, I mean, one child in temporary accommodation is too many, isn't it? We try to avoid a bed and breakfast setting for children in temporary accommodation. That's come from service users who've said that that's the least preferred option. So there's different types of accommodation that we use. We try, when it's a child, for it to be things like a lease or existing properties, so that it's more like a house setting, so that children have got their own cooking facilities, and they can they've got like their own space, their own area. There are some children that are in caravans. There are some children that are in bed and breakfast settings, but our main priority for the children, and we do absolutely everything we can, is to make sure that they are in the most appropriate accommodation, because we do recognise once a child is, I strongly believe Temporcom should be an ACE. I think it has such a profound impact on a child's life when they have a sustained period of time in inappropriate housing. So it's something that's really it means a lot to myself and the rest of the team to make sure that that is a priority, that they are in the most appropriate home. Don't know if you want to chip in on that, Katie?
Yeah, and I think you asked about the plan for providing that, making sure children aren't in bed and breakfast anymore, and that will be the growth. We have a lease scheme where we lease private sector properties off landlords, and we've done a lot of work, and the report sets out in terms of an improvement plan around that lease scheme, and the growth of that should be able to cover off that we don't have children in bed and breakfast settings, but there will, as we've said, continue to be in those settings, which are the most suitable ones. And the more properties we get, the more locations we have, the more we can place people close to where suits needs. It's actually, in terms of some of our new developments for temporary accommodation, it's actually the single households that we're finding more challenging and needing new models for. The turnover, and I'm sure somebody will come in with better knowledge of this, but actually turnover of properties and length of time in temporary accommodation is much lower for households. So although those numbers seem quite consistent, there is quite a turnover. For families, it's the single households that we're now finding in there for kind of long periods of time. And I'm going to hand over to Anna to answer the SHG question, because she's our guru on all things capital grant.
Yeah, so in terms of the social housing grant, each year we're allocated a certain amount. The schemes will come forward from the RSLs, and we'll allocate that social housing grant in terms of which RSLs are sort of ready to take up that funding. And then slippage is then normally available in Q4. So we'll normally find out in Q4 at the end of the year what funding is available. And then depending on whether there are schemes that we can bring forward, we will obviously try and claim the slippage at that point. but it does have to be spent within that financial year. So it's just additional funding that's become available towards the end of the financial year.
Okay, Sam. Okay, got a thumbs up on that. So finally, online, I've got Councillor Cheryl. Cheryl?
Thanks very much, Chair, for letting me speak, not on this committee. Just like to thank everyone for the report, starting with that. Just a quick question. Apologies if I've missed a mention of it because the connection here is very poor. Beginning of February, there were 16 schemes announced for North Wales, £10 million, but none in Conway. It was for acquiring properties and land where homes will be developed. Do we know why Conway didn't get any of that? That was my first question. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Councillor Cheryl. Yeah, we have Councillor Gareth brought this up in audit, so we have spoken to him about this as well. We claimed £20 million additional funding last year that we weren't allocated, so we went way above our allocation of slippage that we were allowed. Well, not that we were allowed, but we were able to claim proportionately. So we did exceptionally well on it. So when it was distributed, it didn't include us because we'd already got way more than what was on offer to deliver in Conway. Anyway, because I must say on that issue, the team are absolutely fantastic at claiming any slippage that's going. So that's if any other councils don't spend their allocation, it goes into a pot and then Welsh Government will redistribute, or if they've got any additional monies. And we are one of the best at sucking that up because we've got so many projects on the go, and I think that's a testament both to the team and to the RSLs, because we've really pushed on the delivery numbers because they haven't been good enough the last few years, and for one reason or another. But the numbers that you'll see coming through are really good, and that, you know, that's a testament both to the team to be able to nimbly and quickly get all those the applications together in order to claim that additional grant, and to the RSLs for being ready and to move schemes around in different years.
Cheryl?
Yeah, thanks very much. I've already spoken outside of here to both Councillor Emily and Katie about, in no particular order, the downsizing issues that elderly people are having, not being able to move out of large houses. RSLs selling properties when they really need to be keeping them, and children being in inappropriate accommodation. Councillor Emily mentioned caravans, and that's completely unacceptable for our families. It really is, and I'm glad that's been acknowledged. And then just to Councillor Chris, his comments about previous administration, I'm sure he'd have had a chat with Councillor Charlie as the housing portfolio holder in the previous administration. So thanks very much, Councillor Mike, for letting me speak.
What can I say, Cheryl? What can I say? Yeah, okay. Meow comes to mind, but no. All that leaves me now, thank you, Cheryl, for those questions. It leaves me now to look at the recommendations, which you can find on page 66. And the recommendation is that the Economy and Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee notes the update. I want to put substantial in front of that, notes the update of that report. Do I have a proposer for that, please? Got Councillor Chris, seconder, Councillor Emily. Yeah, and to confirm that Tom has withdrawn his. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dawn. So all those in favour? Yeah, if you're happy for substantial update, yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, please. Anyone against? No. Any abstentions? No. So that just leaves me now to say to the team, Councillor Emily and Kate and the team, thank you very much for what you're doing. I think you can all go home now and have a nice cup of tea. So thank you very much. So yeah, you're absolutely free to go. So item 9 is to consider a report by the Head of Environment, Roads and Facilities on the following matter. and that is basically the biannual overview of county-wide coastal and fluvial flood risk reduction schemes, February 2025 update. You can find this item on pages 100 up to 197. The report will be introduced by Councillor Gronwy Edwards, and I believe then Councillor Gronwy Edwards will hand over to Owen Connery, who is our flood risk and infrastructure manager. And Owen will present more detail to that. So, Councillor Gronwy Edwards.
Good evening, all. Apologies for not being able to attend in person. I am extremely tied up at the moment with lambing, and it is basically a 24-hour job. But certainly, I welcome the opportunity to introduce the report and basically saying, how do you follow that after such a glowing report from our housing team? But I have nothing to be concerned about, because certainly the work that the flood prevention team has developed and produced over the last few years is remarkable. Also, they've managed to protect over 2,000 properties over recent years and drawn down somewhere in the region of £73 million of Welsh Government funding, as well as our own, to protect those houses, because housing is vitally important, but protecting them from flooding is also equally important. There's nothing worse than losing your possessions or property to flood, as we all know. So it is a remarkable report. The amount of funding that Conway has drawn down over these years has been almost a quarter of the total Welsh budget for flood protection, both coastal and inland protection. There are a whole range of schemes in there, as you'll see on the on page 103. The different types of scheme, including coastal protection, the inland schemes that we've done in different areas of the county. And Owen will go through these in more detail, obviously. But I would like to thank the officers of ERF, and Owen and his team in particular, for the amount of work they've been able to deliver and are still delivering in these what we know are extreme weather conditions that we seem to be experiencing over recent years, and this year has been no exception. So over to Owen Connery. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Gronwy. You opened up with how do you follow that? I think you follow it with another excellent report, is what I've read. So, Owen, if you'd like to go through with some detail.
Yeah, thanks very much, councillors, for having me here today. I'm afraid there's only one of me, not seven. But hopefully I'll be equally. Yeah, Billy, no mates. Yeah, but my Geraint is there in the background, keeping an eye on things anyway. So thanks very much for having me. This is an update on where we are regarding flood risk and infrastructure, or flood risk projects that we have in the county. The report follows the same format as previous years. However, spoiler alert, this will be the last one of this format of reports. Next year, we'll have an all singing, all dancing. I'll come to that a little bit later on. But moving on to the details, you know, there is background in this. I know this report explains how we go from how we get money out of the Welsh Government, and the majority of the funding for construction phase comes from the Welsh Government, 85%. Conwy County Borough Council are very good in supporting my business cases. When I put in a business case every year, we put in a business case for 15% of the construction costs. And touch wood, the last number of years, Conwy Council has always contributed to those. So while the Welsh Government are providing, Conwy Council councillors are voting for my business cases to reduce flood risk to Conwy residents. So everyone of the residents, you know, they're all benefiting from input from our local councillor. So moving on to section 311, project phases, it identifies how we take a project through from, you know, because we deal with officers in the flood branch in Welsh Government. So the strategic outline business case is taken onto it, an outline business case which is taken onto a full business case, all very boring, but very necessary, because you have to produce, you will not get money out of a funding partner if the benefit does not outweigh the cost of implementing that scheme. So that's why there's a specific procedure to go through. It's explained there in section 3, and the business case guidance are all there for everybody to see in the notes there in Appendix D. Moving on to Section 3 further on, we also seek out funding from other parties as well. Believe it or not, Welsh Water, everybody gives out about Welsh Water, and certainly we had enough of them there in the last month. But we did achieve a £600,000 contribution from Welsh Water for some of our coastal schemes because it was protecting their assets. And going forward, I have had within the last month more discussions with Welsh Water and Network Rail about cooperative working. I think they have identified, the benefits of seeing where, if they're spending money on protecting their assets, if we can help out. So there is a lot more collaboration going on, even more so than say 5 years ago. So I'd like to put that we're not working in a silo here on our own in the flood risk team. We do reach out, and we'll take money from any quarter. So we're not proud.
Just getting a request if you could just pull the mic a little bit closer to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just for the benefit of those online.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Moving on to Section 3113, which identified the coastal schemes. So, and the different project funding areas. So we've got the main Welsh Government flooding, what they call the FCERM programme, Flooding Coastal Erosion Risk Management Programme. We have 4 schemes in that area in Dalwood Ellen, Penman Mower, 2 in Penman Mower, actually, Gragley Road and Brynhelig and Schoolbank Road. And then on the coastal schemes, moving on, these are the larger schemes. Now, people say, a lot of on the coast is where we have the population. If you take a scheme like Llandudno, it's thousands of properties that will benefit from reduced flood risk in Llandudno. Same in Kimmel Bay. Llanrfecken is the same. We had a flooding event in Llanrfecken last April. Colwyn Bay as well, hundreds of properties to be protected, and Penryn Bay. You've got the college there, and again hundreds of properties. So the coastal schemes are the big star headline, but I wouldn't underestimate the other schemes. They're coming to a natural end. I'd like to think that Kimmel Bay is on site. That just leaves us with Kimmel Bay and Llanrfecken are on site. Sorry, Kimmel Bay and Llandudno were on site. Llanrfecken is just the last remaining scheme. We'll hopefully take that to site next year. Moving on, then there's a very, very worthy pot of money available called small scale schemes, where we as a local authority, if we identify smaller schemes up to a value of, I think in the Welsh Government guidance, it's £300,000, which is a lot of money. You can get a lot for £300,000. We have 4 of them in the process at the moment. I know council. I was sitting here this time last year, and I was talking to one of the local councillors about Station Road, Deganwy, and Morva Drive, Conwy, and I was saying, yeah, we'll be on site with them. We intend to be by the next time. We haven't been on site, and I think the council will know who I'm talking about. But I would like to reassure her that the valves that we're talking about in Station Road, Deganwy and Morva Drive are sitting down at the moment in the depot, and the tender has been put out for Station Road and Morva Drive, and we've identified a preferred contractor. So they will be starting in the coming months, those 2, Station Road, Deganwy and Morva Drive. And then a critical culvert review, that's an ongoing process, and Tanavron overland flow culvert, that's on site at the moment, and that'll be wrapped up this financial year as well. And again, there's details about these in the sheets at the back. Resilient Roads Programme, as I said, most of our money comes from the flood branch, and this is one where we've benefited as a local authority. We've drawn down nearly £20 million in the last, since COVID, from the Welsh Government Transport through this Resilient Roads Programme, and that has covered the construction costs at Old Colwyn. You may recall any of the older councillors or people that have been in post for a while, and Councillor Sherrill will be one who will always have been banging on about Old Colwyn, and we hadn't got funding. We did secure it at the start of COVID, just before COVID, a small pot of money which grew and with different allocations. And as officers, we constantly seek out funding. And Welsh Government Transport, we eventually got almost £20 million out of them to build basically from Rotary Way down to the railway arches down there. Now there is another pot of money, the path to completion of the Old Colwyn scheme, in other words, from Rotary Way to Porth areas is not as straightforward, or there is no identified pot of money for that. However, it is significantly protected and a lot better, and it's waiting. You know, it's certainly a project that it's always sitting ready to go, and it's ready to go anytime funding becomes available, and we constantly will seek out funding for that. And then here's the new kid on the block. It's the last couple of years. It's called natural flood management, and this is small scale intervention in rural, mostly in rural areas. We have a couple of schemes down in Llansannan, Capelcourig, Compemagno, also down in Dalwood Ellen, where we use, these are small interventions, a couple of £100 each. You might have maybe a dozen of them over a section of farmland, where we slow the flow of water, and we're working to, it's sort of seed funding, or Welsh Government. This is something that's going to become more and more. If you were at any of the farmers here and that are councillors, if you were down at the Welsh show last year, the minister was all talking about natural flood management. It's the buzzword. People can understand it. Green, it's not concrete. It's planting, it's slowing the flow down. Quite difficult if you have steep catchments like you have down in the Conwy Valley. But we have, we've used a small pot of our money to work with Cardiff University, and we've installed a scheme at Anvar TH. We've installed down in Dalwood Ellen, and you know, I was encouraging the lads to get out with the drone there even today, to just basically, you know, it's very impressive when you can see the water building up behind these what they call leaky barriers, or you know, woody dams, and that's water that is just held back long enough so it doesn't go into the water course. Now, one isn't going to make a hell of a lot of difference, but if in a catchment you have lots and lots of these, and you know, this is something I wouldn't dismiss it. It's sort of a bit touchy-feely or woolly. People had it in the previous, you know, sort of, oh yeah, it'd be nice now to do that, these interventions, but they're becoming more and more, I don't mean more and more popular, but they're certainly recognised as a means of reducing flood risk. If you can stop the water getting into the water course in the first place, you won't have torrents of water flowing through Llanrwst underneath the bridge. So just moving on, there's here's just two last points which maybe haven't been, and you're going to see a bit more of me now, because I've put an item on the agenda for next month, if I can get it through, and I'll be talking to the officers about that, our local flood risk management strategy. Okay, so that's going to be, we've been working on that in the background for about a year. You may say, well, why is it taking a year? Well, when you see the document, you'll understand, because it's not just a strategy, it's also an an environmental study and a habitat study, which is all part of it. This basically reflects the Welsh Government policies. All local authorities, 22 of them in the country, have to produce their own local flood risk management strategy. We will have our strategy. There will be a very important table in that strategy when it comes to which will identify, which is split, which basically identifies, split up our county into 23 sort of flood risk catchments, and then each one of those catchments identify projects that we as a local authority want to take forward. And this is where local communities, you know, I'll be talking to my area maintenance officers. As I said, I have a good handle on where our flood risk issues are, but maybe there may be areas within that have escaped us within the flood risk team, but there'll be a table in there, and there'll be a local flood risk action plan. And going forward every year, I will come to you, or an officer in my position will come to you and present progress on the action plan. And you can say, why didn't you do that? Why did you do that? Well done for doing that. You need to do more, or whatever like that. It'll be a tabulated action plan, as opposed to me coming giving you what I'm presenting to you. The action plan will be part of the local strategy. We have 23, 24 areas, different catchments in it. So there may be areas in flooding on the highways. There may be areas of individual properties have flooded. There may be assets that have been identified as being substandard and cause flooding. They will all be in the action plan. And every year,
and this report is on our forward work programme to come forward
next month. Yeah,
so,
a draft one. Final programme. Yes, absolutely, and it will be going. Draft will be coming to, because the actual then we will have to go out to consultation before the final. Yeah, we would have to go out to consultation, and so the public will see this as well. But what I'm saying to you is, this is a biannual report. In future, I'll be reporting on the action plan. And then just the last one there, which is also another report that we'll be bringing to you, or just the background to a report we hope to be bringing to you in September. And this is something that you may have heard of. Any were councillors here back in 2019, SAB, SUDS. Everybody here is now, and what people associate with that. This is reducing flow, surface water flow coming off new development and slowing it down, getting into the watercourse. That's the SUDS part. The SAB part of it is the management of it by the local authority. Yeah. And what I've included in the appendix here for information purposes is the North Wales SAB guidance. Okay, so you're getting a sneak preview here. I know the date and it says 2021, but that's just when it was originally drafted, or the original conception.
And I know you're giving us a sneaky preview of SABs, and that SABs will be coming in September. To this committee.
So I'll wrap it up at there, and I'm quite happy to take any question. But there's lots to read. We're watching television tonight now. There's 90 pages there in my report, and only one officer presented.
How do I follow it? No, I won't do it. I like, we've discussed this report, Owen, and, the upstream projects, which I said to Owen, it looks like someone's just thrown a load of sticks in a ditch there, but they were carefully placed and holding that water back. As you say, one little scheme may not make the big difference, but if you have many of these schemes, you're holding the water back up there and stopping the flow further down the line. So yeah, there's interesting schemes there. So thank you very much for that. Online I have Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. So again, another excellent report. Thank you to the officers that are involved. Thank you to Owen. Being in Ross-on-Sea, representing Ross-on-Sea, obviously I love the massive big coastal defences and all the benefits that have come from that, not just in terms of flood defence, but actually the other benefits for the well-being of our residents. But what I particularly like is the innovative ideas and the local flood risk management that you're doing, the natural versions, so the leaky dams and things like that. And you did touch on it, Owen, but I would like members to be aware of how important it is that we've got the links with Cardiff University on this, because although there's a lot of theoretical thinking in terms of how we can use nature to hold back the water and planting and the leaky dams that you spoke of, and you've also done some work with culverts that follow the contour lines. By linking with Cardiff University, what we're actually doing there is making that evidence-based. So we're getting that evidence base. So again, we'll be sector leading, we'll be giving that information to Welsh Government, we'll be giving that information to other counties. And I just think members should be aware of, just, although you touched on it briefly, how important that actually is. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hannah. Yeah, so next I have Councillor Sam online.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the update, Owen. I'm going to stop going on about Station Road now, because I can see, and I know you gave me an update in the local area forum a few weeks ago. So I'm looking forward to that coming forward and that rain flooding being alleviated. I would just like to propose that we note the content of this report and the associated documents, and that we thank Owen for single-handedly persevering this evening and presenting that report all on his own. Thank you very much, Owen.
Thank you, Sam. I think it's fair to say that I think he's got the head of service online for a bit of moral support, but that's noted. And regarding Station Road, I think if you go to page 132 in the report, you might see your valves there. Something to get excited about. But obviously, on a serious note, Station Road, when we're in heavy rain, is sometimes impassable. So that'll make a big difference. So online now, I've got Keith, then in the chamber, I've got Louise, then it'll be over to Nia, then Paul and Chris. Okay. Thank you. So Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mike, Chair.
You've muted, Keith.
Yeah, I think I was automatically muted. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I heard the thanks, Mike. So, okay, carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Owen, again for the report. I'm absolutely in awe of the amount of money that you've managed to get to fund these projects and that. And it's quite good to hear that you're starting to get Welsh Water and different stakeholders on board. I think there's a couple that I would like to see on board if they ever make their way towards us is Natural Resources Wales and maybe Trunk Road Agency for their sort of respective assets. I'm always going to be eternally grateful for the project in Llandrillas that you did, but the last time round it was Natural Resources Wales' asset that calls to houses under 4 foot of flooding. Is there any way forward with Natural Resources Wales? Do you know, just quickly off the top of your head? I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Keith. Natural Resource Wales are actually funded out of the same pot of money that we're funded from. You know, so sometimes we have a and obviously they have a a countrywide remit. You know, some of the projects that, and not just Conwy County Borough Council, you know, some of the other North Wales local authorities, we're delivering bigger projects than Natural Resource Wales, you know, like on some of them, you know, I think there's a scheme down in Bala. I think that might have been one of their larger projects, but like our coastal schemes, like the ones in Rill and Denbighshire and over in Gwynedd, and our own schemes are quite significant. They don't have a lot of money. That's the thing. Sometimes it's easier for a local authority to get funding because we can target like we've got a specific problem. We're one of 22. We go up against other local authorities, and if we make a good case and we have a lot of numbers, and the thing about us in North Wales is that we have a lot of numbers on the coast, and we have a lot of numbers. We've unfortunately, there is a flood risk because places like down the valley. In the country areas, our underlying rock, we just seem to have a flood risk, and we do get funding. It's hard to get money out of Natural Resource Wales. What I would say about Natural Resource Wales, and one funding that we have got out of them, and which I haven't mentioned in this report because it's more of an erosion issue, is that T Crun, and I know some of the local councillors in Abergele, we have got funding out of their funding a study to see how we can replenish, like T Crun, for people that aren't aware, it's a section of beach between around Pensarn where it's suffering erosion, natural process. The beach is just going from west to east. The solution is to bring the beach back from east to west, but that's by mechanical means. Welsh Natural Resource Wales have funded that study to see if it can be done. And the hope would be that we would identify sources of funding going in the future. So we have brought in small pots of money, but from Natural Resource Wales, but nothing to the extent they concentrate on their own assets, Councillor. But there are other areas. There's certainly, I might be talking about some of them with Councillor Paul might mention now in a second. We might mention some NRW issues as well. Yeah.
Okay, Keith. I've got thumbs up off Keith. So in the chamber, Louise.
I feel a bit bad now because it's a bit late, because my point was just I wanted to name check Oliver Edwards is in your team, and he has been brilliant with the Friends of West Shore with all the delivery of that scheme there. He's come to talk to us several times, and that's fantastic. So I just wanted to name check him.
Very much. Cynhorydd Nia online.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gadeirydd. Dwi am siarad yn Gymraeg, rhag ofn bod y cyfieithwyr wedi diflasu'n llwyr yn ystod y cyfarfod yma. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Owen, mae'r adroddiad yn un arbennig iawn, a dwi'n edrych ymlaen at gael delio hefo'r problem. Are we okay with translation?
Hello, can you hear me? It's translator here. Hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but couldn't hear you to start with.
Okay. I'll
start again. Thank you very much, Owen, for that very special report. Very informative. I'm looking forward to sort this problem in School Bank Road. once and for all. But I just want to speak about the NFM, the flood management. Owen and I have discussed this in the past many times. And I just want to add that we as councillors in the rural areas, or I anyway, am very happy to help with this and contact with farmers and landowners. I'm sure Goronwydd is nodding his head there, agreeing with me. We will all be very happy to work with you to ensure a difference here in the valley. Thank you very much.
Dale can vouch for that. That's noted. I'm getting nods on that. So that's, yep, okay.
Yeah, diolch, Councillor Nia, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, so Councillor Paul, and then I have Chris again in the chamber.
Yeah, again, commend Owen on the report. I greatly enjoy my relationship with Owen. I hold him in high esteem. We have many robust conversations about many things, but I always learn something from those conversations. And you will have seen me prior to the meeting tonight engaging in some of our local flood issues. And so I'm not going to raise them. I'm going to raise a general point, and it's really to build on his idea about having action plans, because I hope on his action plans we can have some more information where we're working both in partnership with private landowners, but also enforcement on private landowners, because I'm conscious more and more private landowners are not maintaining their drainage systems. Therefore, there is displacement from that into the public areas. But I think also there are some private landlords, private landowners who are diverting their waters into the public systems. Now, I don't know anything about the detail of how we challenge these people and act on enforcement, but maybe if Owen could at least indicate when we come to the action plans where these problems are occurring, that there will in future be some action. I don't even know if we have an enforcement officer, for example, but could he sort of deal with that issue?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I think we will get more detail in that when this comes in the future. But Owen, if you've already said on the action plans that you'll be wanting the input of local residents, councillors, etc. But if you'd just like to,
yeah, just very quickly, like
sure.
Landowners do have, all landowners, anybody that owns a house, you know, your water flowing out your driveway onto the public highway, that shouldn't happen. You know, so everybody, so that's the very small scale. The other scale is, you know, you could have developments where water is flowing out the gate onto a public highway, middle of December, freezes, somebody slips and falls. Where's the liability? Well, the council, but you know, the problem is, so yeah, you're right, Councillor Paul, and enforcement, you know, and you know, this is even Welsh Water, God love them, they've got an issue with water going into their assets as well, because everybody knows about combined sewer overflows. Well, why is it? It's not because there's a whole lot of people using their toilets in a panic. It's because groundwater is getting into their system. So Welsh Water are quite proactive now in trying to identify where groundwater gets into their systems, and they will divest themselves of that. I don't know how they go about doing it, but if they find that they have an illegal connection going into their system, they will look to block that off. Because they're trying to, obviously their capacity and their treatment plants and stuff like that is impacted by that. So you're right, enforcement is certainly, you know, there are laws in place, you know, there are laws in place, Councillor Paul, and you know, the local authority has the ability to use those laws. I hear what you're saying, the local strategy will be out. Let's get maybe something in the local strategy about that. Well, I think there is actually something in the local strategy about that, but yeah.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Paul. Lastly, I'm going to wrap up now. I've got Councillor Chris Hughes in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. And can I also thank Owen for his support throughout the year. I think he must see certain emails and phone numbers in his sleep at times, and when he sees them on his computer, thinks, "Oh no, not again." But having said that, my question is, you've said right up at the beginning of the project, the best way of resolving floods is to avoid the water getting into the system in the first place. And I wonder if, as for my first question, could you tell us what input your department has had into the development of the new LDP? I'd be keen to know that, because obviously that is our planning policies, and if we can have planning policies that are robust enough to prevent that, I mean, this year you have to pick up the consequences of a planning department an application in my own ward, which I said would flood, and within 6 months of the completion of the development, it flooded, and it cost you and your team a lot of money to repair the bridleway, which collapsed into the river as a consequence of the amount of flood. And development control at that time said, "Oh, that development is too far downstream to have any impact on the site on which the development took place." Now, Spatial Plan Wales actually says there's nowhere too far downriver, and every option should be considered, and that's carried on into future Wales in terms of the impact. So I'm keen to try and ensure that wherever possible, your team has had significant amount of input into our planning policies at the beginning, so that we are all, development control, when they pick that policy up, say, that's what I've got to do. Yeah. And for me, it's really important that we recognize the impact that any flood or any development can have, not just within 500 meters of the development, but a mile, half a mile, 2 miles downstream. Yeah, because you get one river flows into another river, which flows into another river, and suddenly it's a problem.
Okay, I'll hand over to Owen. If I mean, obviously, there's a specific question here about the LDP, the replacement local development plan, and I think there's a lot of that's going to come under SABs, isn't it? I would have thought with development, or developments.
I'll give you a very quick response, Councillor Chris.
Owen, I don't want to rush you.
No. No. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So there's two elements to when somebody's, I want to build 50 houses in Old Colin, say I want to build 50 houses. There's two areas. You apply for planning permission. You also have to apply since 2019 for SABs, sustainable drainage approved. Yeah. And that limits, so this is since 2019, so any new developments 2019, and we've a team within flood risk and infrastructure who would scrutinise an application independent of planning. So you say what's going to, we sit independent of planning. Yeah, so if the developer wants to develop any development over 100 square meters, two properties at over 100 square meters, which is nothing. 100 square meters is 10 by 10. They have to apply for sustainable drainage. We have sites under development or coming through planning now where there are significant, we've made a significant difference in what may have been proposed, what's been built. And it's not because I have shares in pipe manufacturers or great things. It's because you cannot, if you've got a green field, you cannot cause more flooding after this development is built than you had before there was a green field there. So green field, rains, water falls down, takes however long to get to the water course. So you have to reduce that green field runoff rate. How do you do that when you've got a load of roofs and driveways and impermeable areas? You have to store that water on site. And if you're driving around some of the sites around Conway now, and you see things like WAVN, what they call attenuation, creates big pipes. If you see big, large diameter pipes, say, what the heck is that thing? They're all storage features. So I'd like to reassure councillors, and we've had, I think one of the local area forums had a presentation from our consenting officer last week. We're quite happy to come to your local area forum, Chris, Councillor Chris, and go through the process with you. But what I will assure you, or any councillors, that any new development in Conwy that goes through, we don't just wait for planning to come to us. Planning application comes in, we get copied in on the planning application. So I know, I go then and my officers, they will go and they'll seek out that developer and they'll say, you haven't come to us looking for sale. Because it makes sense for them. Because what you don't want to do is develop your nice scheme, your architect's layouts, your paving, your all that. And then I come along and say, or my team comes along and say, where's your SAB proposal? And you've got to limit it to this greenfield runoff rate. And how do you do that? We either have to put a pond in, you have to put in oversized pipes in, you have to put in hydro breaks in, you have to put in swales, and then suddenly your whole development layout is messed up. So I'd like to reassure Councillor Chris, I'm quite happy to, because Councillor Chris, I think it'd be very good if I maybe had a sit down with you and your local area forum colleagues to explain it to you, because there are robust, and this is all through North Wales, okay? This is the legislation that came in. Now, developers now, and we've been working with the guys in housing as well, you know, for the Cartrevi site, well, any local RSL sites and that, they're all aware of it. So from a flood risk point of view, some of the problems that may have been identified in the past, Councillor Chris, should not happen now at all. And I can through that with you.
Yeah.
No problem.
And thank you very much for that. I think the project, one of the projects you obviously know about, was actually signed off by planning in the February of 2020, and yet they still didn't get SABs. Despite the fact that it was nearly 3 months after the legislation came into place. And the other point was, you mentioned about about landowners having a responsibility, but in some cases, developers have gone onto people's land without the landowner's permission and done works on the landowner's land, which have had consequences for the neighbouring developments, and the landowner didn't know nothing about it, and he's been quite angry about things. But yeah, it was the main. I guess yes. So SATs will take over. I just wanted to ensure that the policies are take account of everything, because there are some things in my understanding of SABs that won't specifically be included in SABs, because that's about how you get rid of the water and everything. But there's also questions about how the water gets there in the first place.
Okay, right, lovely. Thank you for that, Chris. Thank you, Owen. Yeah, I'm sure you'll get some invitations to some of the local area forums to discuss that further. I think that'd be very useful to have. So on this now, we have recommendations on page 100, which is that Economy and Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee note this report and associated appendices. I've had that proposed by Councillor Sam some time ago. I've got Councillor Tom who's seconding that. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No. Well, that just leaves me to say safe journey home to those in the chamber and a good evening to those online. I'll now close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Owen, for taking the time to come and discuss the updates with us. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.